right now on VFNtv. What do we do about all this hate and this division and this discourse happening in the society, in the nation? Well, guess what? We're going to hear from Arthur Brooks being interviewed by Ben Shapiro talking about his book, Love Your Enemies. Dr. King had it right when he talked about love is the only thing that's going to work. Right now on VFNtv. Be sure to subscribe and press alert to get new notifications of new success secrets made available on VFNtv. When I think about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I mean, he was faced with so many different odds, so much hate in the nation in regards to racism and things that were going on. And he stood up to make a difference in the nation. And he did that not by being violent, not by being angry, by being loving and kind to everyone. Because he said specifically, the more they hate us, the more we have to love them. I'm Greg Lancaster, and of course joining me is John Ramos.
Hello. When
I think about Dr. King, when Dr. King was talking about, I remember he said this, he said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And it's sort of like, what are you wanting? Are you wanting love? Are you wanting hate to go away? Well, more hate's not going to drive hate away.
That's going to make it bigger and stronger, right?
One demon's not going to send another demon away, right?
That's right.
It just ain't going to happen. But, if you actually love your enemies, and we're going to talk so much stuff we're going to talk about today, what Jesus said, but also, Arthur Brooks. Yeah, he's being interviewed by, Ben Shapiro about his book, Love Your Enemies. Yeah, you can see the book right here. I want to encourage you to get this book. I got the book and began to read it, and I was so encouraged by it because he's talking about, there was this campaign that was going on, these protesters happening in Washington, D.C., and you had a conservative rally, having a rally. Then you had a Black Lives Matters rally. And the Black Lives Matters leader, I believe he's out of New York, I forget his name right now, but he said, we were approaching more of a, militant approach. Aggressive. And then the conservatives were there just speaking truth and kind and love.
Sure.
And they loved on him. They invited him over and just gave him the stage and the mic. And they took pictures with him and selfies with him and just loved on him. And they just totally realized, I have the total wrong approach. He didn't change his viewpoint.
Sure.
He just changed his approach. Sure. Which is a loving approach. That's pretty cool.
Not reacting, but responding. The cover of his book says how decent people can save America from the culture of contempt. And what we're seeing, a culture that's divided, that you can't have a different opinion without attacking another person. Whatever happened to civility and being able to share ideas without considering that person an actual enemy and spewing hatred at each other?
How to be a civil Christian.
Yes.
In a civil land.
Yeah.
We talk about that at civilchristianity.org. You can actually sign up to be a part. Because you think about it, we're called, what does it mean to be civil?
And the 10 principles that we need to adhere to so that we can walk together.
And guess whose 10 principles they were?
Who were they?
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s. We just tweaked them just a little bit for today's technology.
The wisdom that he had in a time like that still speaks today. It's awesome.
It's important because if you're walking with people who don't understand love, and you're just kind of like, da, 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 yeah, we love you. And somebody jumps up, we hate you. You're like, oh my gosh.
They're not with us.
You're walking with us, right? And so to walk with us in regards to the civil Christianity, everybody has to sign the commitment like they did for Dr. King. He says, I commit to these 10 principles. And one of them is abiding. We talk about abiding all the time.
Sure.
You can get your abiding plan at iabide.org. But they realized this, that it could cost me my life today when I go out.
No doubt.
So I want to be right with God. I want to be right with my fellow man. And I don't have any hate in my heart. And so they were abiding with the Lord. They were loving people, doing kind deeds, because they didn't know. They even had next of kin on there who to contact if something went on.
It's amazing.
It's
amazing.
It's an example because he was a Christian man with a spiritual call, as his daughter said. He didn't have a civil rights call. He had a spiritual call. His assignment was the spiritual civil rights. And he realized that if I'm going to make and he's also, he was a constitutional lawyer, so he actually stayed under the Constitution. And he stayed a Christian, not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. No. But he stayed faithful to God in regards to all that we all are. And the context of that is like, look what he did.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
Amazing.
So he actually walked out the example. You had Malcolm X going at the same time. And Malcolm felt militant, and you can get really angry when things are happening to you. The Panthers were going about at the same time, the Black Panthers.
Reports are that Malcolm X wanted to join him in one event, and he's like, no, we cannot commingle because you're going to.
Because the approach was different. It wasn't love.
Yeah.
But they showed appreciation for him in the context at that night. And so, it didn't work out well for Malcolm. You know, he was taken down by his own folks, who understand. But they both were pushing for the same outcome in regards to, you know, every man's created by God, somewhat. But the outcome was love won. Love does win.
Always does, doesn't it?
Yeah, when it's God's form of love. And so this interview, right, with Ben Shapiro.
With Arthur Brooks, who's the president of the American Enterprise Institute. He's a best-selling author of Love Your Enemies. And he's joining Ben in this discussion as they talk about how to handle criticism and a whole lot more. But basically, how can we bridge the gap between these things that divide us and not be on the opposite ends of each other, hating each other? You know, we talk about this often, but part of healing me is hearing me.
Right.
And so people feel strongly one way or the other because a lot of times they've been hurt, they're living, you know, these things out. And I think he does an excellent job. I think he borrows some principles from the scriptures, which we're going to talk about. Of course he does.
Well, too, it's like some people, when they finally get to articulate it, they find out how stupid it is. You know? It's like, oh, I never thought about that. Because nobody's given them a chance to be able to share what's going on.
And love is patient. It's not going to be, we're not going to react.
Look at God.
Yeah, we're going to respond. And so he reminds us about taking a moment to respond.
Well, let's go to Arthur Brooks now. This is being interviewed by Ben Shapiro. By the way, you got to catch his show. It's every Sunday night, the Ben Shapiro Show, where he interviews one guest for 1 hour. It's good in this day when everybody has their opinions. You get to hear from somebody. Let's go there now. Arthur Brooks.
Okay, so at the very end of your book, Love Your Enemies, you give a bunch of tips for people how to actually get beyond your own feelings about this. And you know, as I say, there's a concept in Judaism called Musar, and Musar is the idea basically of people trying to convince you to be better at being a human being. I took this as a work of Musar. I'm reading it and I'm thinking to myself, okay, how can I do better? So what are some of your tips for folks to help love their enemies, to help get beyond ego? Because a lot of it is about ego submission, about saying like, you know what? Contempt would be the easy response here. I'll take the hit, and I'm going to try and love you anyway.
Yeah. To begin with, the most important thing to keep in mind is that when somebody treats you with contempt, you have to see it as an opportunity. And this is a real mindset shift. And I learned this from our friends, the Latter-day Saints, previously known as the Mormons. I mean, and you know, they all go on missions, and it's amazing. It's like, man, how do you deal with the rejection? I mean, because, you know, people are not like, oh boy, Mormons on the porch. You know, it's like, pretend we're not home. I mean, it's very tough psychologically. And say, no, you understand. Every time that there is some rejection, that's an opportunity for us to react to the rejection in such a way that people are inherently morally attracted to it. So the first thing to keep in mind is that we have mastery over ourselves. This is the blessing. You know, when we're created in God's image, we're actually able to extend the time between stimulus and response. You know, you're stimulated. If you're treated with contempt and you answer just like that with contempt, then the time between stimulus and response has been minimized because you're not the master of yourself. You can make the decision to answer with contempt, but typically we don't. So what we need to do is to take that time and say, I was just treated with contempt. It's a big opportunity. That's a big opportunity to answer somebody with kindness. And in so doing, somebody's going to see it. It's going to change my heart. And I'm never going to go away saying, you know what? I wish I would have been more of a jerk. That's not what, so that's principle number one. Now, principle number two is rebellion. And, you know, it's funny. It's one of the things that I take a lot of my writing and a lot of my thinking from Saul Alinsky, actually. He was a very clever guy. His politics were all messed up as far as I'm concerned. He was wrong on most things, but he was really good on communication, and he was very clever in a lot of ways. And one of the things that he did, and a lot of things that people on the political left have done from time immemorial, is to stand up to the man, is to have a sense of the man. Well, we need to do that right now too. I mean, again, not to treat anybody with contempt, even the man, but to remember that 7% of Americans are profiting from the current environment. Now, I say this with appropriate humility because sometimes it's been me. And I don't want it to be me. And that's why I've written the book. And that's why we're having this conversation. That's why I'm so grateful that we get to talk about it, because we haven't been perfect, but we want to be better. 93% of Americans want to be better. They don't want the current climate of contempt. Well, the people who are unrepentant about this, who are getting rich and powerful and famous and getting clicks and making money and getting elected to office, that 7%, we need to leave them behind. I mean, it's time for us to turn that off and to think about what we can actually do to lift other people up. And here's the third one. Here's the one that's really capturing my imagination. We have to go where we're not invited and say things that people don't expect. That's the sort of the missionary spirit. That's why I admire you. You're unafraid. And you go places where, I mean, technically you're invited by the college Republicans or something, but you're not invited. I mean, let's be honest, when you're going on to a lot of these college campuses, there's a hostile environment. And the truth is they don't understand you. I mean, I've heard your message for years. You're not coming in a spirit of hostility and contempt. On the contrary, you're talking about big issues and you're trying to explain things in coherent terms. And you represent something. We're all kind of, these days in modern American polarized politics, we're just avatars for something else, right? But you're not invited, but you're going anyway. And you're going in a spirit of adventure. And you're always happy. I can tell. You're happy.
I enjoy it. It's fun, yeah.
Of course you do. And look, I write about happiness. I know the tells. Mm-hmm. I can tell that you're happy to be there. That's a really, really good thing. What we need more is people who have this spirit of the missionary. They want to be there even though they haven't been invited. And they're going to say things that people don't expect. Not more hostile, not more outrageous than people expected, but more loving. And not agreeing, but more loving than people expected. And I'll leave you with this one image that's really stuck with me lately. And I closed the book with this because it had such a big impact on me. You know, my wife and I, we do marriage prep. We teach marriage prep for 25 or 30 couples every couple of months in a Catholic retreat center near our home, and it's really super inspirational because these guys are, I mean, they're in it. They're going to get married for the rest of their lives till death do us part, and we're just given a little bit of our wisdom because we've been doing it for a long time, and we were in this chapel at this marriage retreat center, and I noticed a sign over the door, but not a sign when you're going in. It's a sign for people who are in the chapel going out into the parking lot. It's the last thing you see when you leave this chapel. And it said, "You are now entering mission territory." I thought to myself, that's not a religious message necessarily. That's Ben and Arthur in our public ministry. Look, we have one life. We have one career. We have one set of opportunities to get out there and spread what's right and true. Your book does this. Your book actually says, this is a gift, share the gift. If I were to summarize, because I got to read the book before anybody watching got to read the book, right? That this is our gift and we get to share it, embrace it with love and happiness and with affection and with positivity. That's as far as I'm concerned, that's the point of your book. That's what we can do with our public ministry and all the things that we talk about as well. Get out there, remember that when you go out of the house and you're talking to friends and you're talking to people who disagree with you, you're in mission territory. Don't mess it up. Nobody kicks down the door and threatens somebody unless they join the church. They try to make it beautiful and they try to make it good. And that's what I can certainly be better at, and that's what I'm dedicating the rest of my life to doing.
Dedicating the rest of my life to do what? To be able to love our enemies and help encourage us how to do it. He's been trying to make a difference through think tanks, right? And he's realizing, forget about thinking. Let's just love folks, and it doesn't matter what you think. They say it doesn't matter how much you know until they know how much you care, right?
That's right.
Well, listen, when we get back from the break, we're going to break in and dive into Love Your Enemies, Arthur Brooks' book, and 3 specific things he talked about, which are very powerful. They're simple to know, but difficult maybe to practice.
To implement. That's
by
right.
God's. But listen, write to us at friends@VFNkb.com. Comment below. We love hearing from you. This is the question we want you to answer if you could. What do you think about loving your enemies? I mean, has that challenged you? Comment below and let us know what your thoughts on that. And of course, Dr. King made a great example about people that were wanting to just, and eventually did take his life, but he still moved in love to the last moment. Comment below if you had that happen to you, and if you're challenged in that area. We want to be able to hear from you. And by the way, take the time to read the comments from the other part of our community and just share back and forth.
That's right.
It's so beautiful. We see you guys talking and then also praying for each other when there's a need, and people, you're posting your prayer request and people are praying for you. That blesses our heart. Well, right after the break, we're going to dive in to Love Your Enemies, the 3 specific things that we can do after the break. Join us after the break.
We'll be right back.
I want to talk to you about our book. My book is out and it's ready for you right now. I Will Fight. 10 strategies to fight for your success. Listen, so many people in the world understand if you're going to be successful, you got to fight for it. And many people who are believers and Christians think that just success falls out of the sky. But God has created the earth to respond to your labor. He's created the universe to respond to you believing in faith in what He's going to do. So I share in this book very specifically about biblical fights that have happened, but also got 10 specific strategies to be able to help you. I don't care if you're a CEO, I don't care if you're a congressperson or a senator, I don't care if you're a janitor, a business owner, a teacher, a pastor. If anybody needs to know how to fight, pastors need to know how to fight for success and define, what success is. But I talk specifically, and I begin in this book, is about how God spoke to me and why am I writing the book. God showed me specifically in a dream, a prophetic dream, several dreams, but one was that he has a wealth transfer coming and he wants to deliver wealth to his people, but they don't have the character and the integrity to be able to manage that wealth. He told me that he's been getting a lot of money and wealth to them, but it goes right through their fingers like holes in a bowl. So they have to learn how to be able to develop strategies, biblical strategies to be able to be positioned. Why? Because a great harvest of souls is coming and it's going to take many, many dollars to be able to bring in that harvest, and it's going to be God's people who will fund that. And so he's looking for people that are willing to say, I want to be positioned. This is all about being positioned for great wealth. And it's not necessarily great wealth in money. It could be great wealth and influence, whatever God has entrusted you with. So it's a free book. You just cover shipping and handling. We want to send it to you for free. And you can go to VFNkb.com for all the details. You can see it on your screen. But listen, it's here. It's right here for you. Wonderful thing. How many nuggets? Maybe 500, 600 wisdom nuggets in addition to these success strategies. It's yours now at VFNkb.com.
We call it Nonviolence 365. Nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. Nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. Nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice and not people. Nonviolence chooses love instead of hate. That's my father's philosophy and methodology of nonviolence.
Welcome back to VFNtv with your host, Greg Lancaster.
Be sure you get your book, I Will Fight.
Yes.
There's over 502 wisdom nuggets in here. It's just free for you, just a little small price of shipping and handling to get this thing to you. 80,000 words of a strategy. We want to get this thing to you. To have so much more too available. Just go to VFNkb.com to be able to find that. Listen, we're talking about Arthur Brooks' book,
Love Your Enemies, how decent people can save America from a culture of contempt. And I think we have the definition of contempt.
It's important because we're going to talk about three things. And the thing is that since we don't understand contempt, it's amazing when I was in law enforcement, people were shocked when they got charged with contempt, right?
Contempt of court. You'll find out how quick.
They had no idea. It's like, is that contempt?
That's right.
As they're behind bars, right? And as an attorney, even officers.
Can be held in contempt, sure.
Yeah, it's amazing authority, right?
That's amazing.
And so when you think about a contempt, because we're going to talk about the first strategies as how to respond to contempt, what is the definition of contempt?
So Merriam-Webster defines it 3 ways. Number 1 is lack of respect or reverence for something. So that's the first one. 2, the state of being despised. So someone is despising you.
Like David's wife despised him.
Yeah. So she was holding him in contempt, right?
Yeah.
And 3rd, willful disobedience to or open disrespect of a court, judge, or legislative body.
There's a lot of contempt going on right now in society.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So we're talking about Arthur Brooks' book, Love Your Enemies. And he talks specifically, or what's the very first one that he talks about?
So the first one is when someone treats you with contempt, despises you, treats you bad, you have to see it as an opportunity. And I think what hinders that is at first we see it as an offense. We see it as an opportunity to be hurt, to be upset, and we become reactionary. But if we change our mindset and how we view that thing, understanding that, Jesus said, things that offend us will come, right? So see it as an opportunity, not as a way to get back or a way to defend yourself.
Yeah, so let's say that again. Let's say it one more time.
So number 1, when someone treats you with contempt,
so when someone treats you like we just talked about.
Correct. You have to see it as an opportunity.
So when somebody disrespects you, despises you, talks down to you, treats you just horrible, what's happening. People are just treating people with contempt everywhere today.
Yeah.
For your own beliefs, you have First Amendment rights. When you exercise them, somebody just speaks down to you, or if you're.
We should probably say exercise them in love, right?
Well, even if you're not even thinking about it, you're just saying like, I believe that we should go this way, real calmly, and somebody just goes, that's immoral, and it's not immoral. They just use that word, and it's like speaking down on someone. It's crazy.
As if it's correct.
Yeah. So when someone treats you with contempt, you have to see it as an opportunity.
And what's the opportunity? The opportunity is to what? Act kindly, move in love, and how to win the person, not to offend the person. Because two offended people can go nowhere.
Well, this happened, in Washington, D.C., like I talked about, when you had Black Lives Matter from New York, and they're all independent groups, and he was moving more in a militant approach, and the conservatives were having a rally and a stage and a mic, and they were moving in love and just appreciation for the country and all that. And their impression was, at first, that these guys must hate us, they must think bad about us. And what happened was, even though they were being militant, the Black Lives Matters were being militant, the conservatives said, the leaders, come on over here. Here's the stage, here's the mic. And they were hugging on him, taking selfies with him, and just loved on him. And so even though they could have taken it as these people hate me or whatever, and I hate them back, they contempt on me, I'll show contempt on them. But they didn't, they loved them. And all of a sudden, no longer were they an enemy, they were actually on the same side of love. You can have a different opinion from somebody, but still love somebody. And it's so important when you think about that, are you taking things personal that is your personal preference? Because the reality is, most people are trying to do what they perceive as right.
Yeah.
And there's only a handful of folks, I think it says like 7% of our nation, that's making money on the other 93% that have these evil intentions.
Sure.
And so some of us are just buying into some of the stuff that we're hearing. And
it's a narrative that further agitates us and separates us. But most Americans are going back to work and living with people with different opinions and all. You got to get along. So how can we get along? I think Jesus says it best in Matthew 5.
Before we say that, so that we have to understand that means that they may be deprived of the knowledge and information that you have, but they don't care how much knowledge you have until you actually care about them. So we have to care about the person. We don't care if we don't care about them. It doesn't matter what we know.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people try to win these things with arguments, as if arguments can win
it's
something.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work. So Jesus talks about it, right?
Yes.
Love your enemies.
Yes. Matthew 5:38 through 42. He says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth." So a contempt for a contempt, right? "But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well."
Dr. King walked this out really well, didn't he?
Continues to say, "And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles, and give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you."
And he also said in Matthew 5:43.
You have heard, share that one. You have heard it said, we've heard it said that you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. And
the second thing that he talks about in his book, he talks about, rebellion, not necessarily rebellion in the context of because we don't promote rebellion at all, resistance to any control or authority, but stand up to the man. Now this is not standing up to authority and doing something wrong to authority. David stood up to the man. It just happened to be Goliath was the man at that particular time. And he stood up. Because he stood up, a whole nation got free. He faced a national threat. He stood up to the man and speak. So you got to speak truth to power, but you speak it in love. And the last thing is that he talks about here is we're missionaries.
Yes.
Missionaries of love, right?
Yeah.
Go where we're invited.
Yeah, so one of the key things he says, go to where we're not invited and say something no one expects.
Right.
we want to be there even though we're not invited.
Right.
So we want to be able to communicate in love and how we approach. Even like when you go to share the love of Christ and win the Lord, you're not going to, like he says, kick the door down and say, hey, you have to do this. You're going to try to build some commonality, and you can do that really by respecting people.
And one way to do it is just listen to them and look at their life and what's in their life that you appreciate.
Yeah, I think Stephen Covey said it best, seek to understand first, then to be understood.
Right.
And a lot of times people are trying to be understood and no one's hearing the other perspective.
Well, we understand America exists because of God, not because of our argument, not because of our Constitution, but it exists because God is, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So you have to understand that one big reason is God. So we have to move in the fear of the Lord when we talk to folks. Realize that God's listening to us. And if we'll move like Jesus moved, like some of the others have moved, the disciples moved like Dr. King moved. I mean, he's a great example because he's an American Christian, and he stayed constitutionally correct. He stayed faithful and to continue to preach the gospel and move in the aspect of love.
Yeah.
And some haters say, well, he made a mistake. It's like,
hello?
Well, you know, love covers a multitude of sin.
That's right.
You know, and so.
I think the issue is, too, is that you can be so right that you're actually wrong, right?
Yeah, that's the sad thing about it. As a matter of fact, we want to hear from you. When you think about this, the 3 things he talked about specifically is?
Number 1.
Yes.
Let's go back. Let me refresh myself. It is...
when you're approached with contempt.
Yes, see it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Number 2, stand up to the man.
Right.
Right. And number 3, go as a missionary.
You know,
So
go where you're invited and say something that they don't expect.
Yeah.
Not something crazy, but something about them. And if we understand that Jesus died for every man on the face of the earth, for God so loved everyone on the earth, which means we can find God's love. We can pray for them and ask God to bless them. He even said, pray and bless your enemies. So it's okay to pray and bless those that are the enemies of God and enemies of your enemies and enemies of the nation.
Jesus told us to do it.
Yeah, he said do it.
He said do it.
And what happens is, all of a sudden, heaven and earth begins to move to switch them from a place of an enemy of God or an enemy of the nation, or maybe in your enemy, and move them into a place of love and in relationship.
I think it heals us as well. Gets all that bitterness and resentment out, because we're seeing them in a different light, understanding that they too can be redeemed. Comment
below. We want to hear from you. Write to friends at VFNkb.com. What are your thoughts about these 3 specific things? We'd love to hear it below. About contempt, how to respond to contempt, how to respond in the missionaries you're going. And the second one is?
Stand up to the man.
Stand up to the man. I want to be able to pray for you right now. Father God, I just pray a blessing over each and every one of our audience, Lord. I pray encouragement, healing over their bodies. Inspire them, Lord God, to be instruments of your love, to go out and speak, moving just supernatural love, God, and bring peace to the nations of the world, Father God. And we ask you right now, dear God, end abortion, send revival, send a 3rd great awakening, we pray, in Jesus' name. And don't forget how easy it is. Love God, love others, and lead others to do the same. God bless. Wait. Don't go anywhere. Subscribe. Listen, together we can touch the world. That's right. Subscribe below. Right. Wait. Don't go away. Subscribe. We're going to touch the world.
You know, a lot of people want to abide with the Lord, but they just don't have a plan to do it. You can request that plan today at iabide.org.
Hey, be sure to check us out at VFNkb.com and also join the VFNkb community at VFNkbcommunity.com. Listen, your success is our success is your success, and our success together is kingdom success.